Good morning and welcome back to Convos with Cam. I'm so excited that you took this moment to stop by briefly. If you're new to the channel, I welcome you. If it's the family that's checking out this video, I welcome you back, family. Hoping that all of you are having a wonderful week so far. Always sending love and light to you and your family. So, this topic, we've talked often about sleep and the importance of sleep. We've even explored how one can even begin to exhibit auditory and visual hallucinations when they are sleep deprived for long enough. We've explored parts work, the various aspects of self, and we've also talked about trauma, right? We talked about that. But I just wanted to take the moment today to share with you this correlation that has been found and linked between childhood trauma and sleep. It's always important to understand that trauma is any disturbance or disruption within one's life, right? And instead of, it being something as simple as maybe um, having an interaction with someone, we all disagreed, or say, for instance, if you were a child and it was a toy you wanted and they said no, well, I mean, you move on from that, right? I mean, not everything is going to be traumatic. And it's also important to know that childhood trauma often is not addressed, right? This can happen for various reasons, whether it be cultural upbringing, whether it be the worldview and belief systems that the child was exposed to growing up. And so then what happens is you become an adult, and possibly at times you may experience another level of trauma, right? And still, we have the childhood trauma that was never addressed. Typically, when people think of childhood trauma, their mind goes to like sexual abuse, right? That's where the mind goes to immediately. And there are other traumas that that child may have possibly even experienced, right? What about neglect? Hmm? What if, that child was neglected? The neglect may have been possibly emotional neglect, y'all. It doesn't have to always be like, I was neglected and I didn't have a space to sleep in, or I was neglected and I didn't have food. Just let's, really expand our understanding of what this can look like. So, what if the child did experience possible like emotional neglect or all the above? Lacking food, the basic needs in one's life. What if they experienced that? It's been proven that experiencing all of those things during childhood, this trauma that is, when it's not resolved, what have I always shared with you? Oh, you can try to suppress that. You can force it back into the subconscious as if it never happened. Whether you do it intentionally or unintentionally, it will begin to show up in other ways. Maybe not as loud as others, right? Meaning that the way it shows up, others may not be able to see it in their interactions with you, but it can also show up in sleep. it can lead to this insomnia, if you will, right? And I just want you to prepare yourself now to go with me on this journey of understanding what this can look like, what's going to be, what has been deemed and researched to be the best treatment for this insomnia that possibly could have come by way of this childhood trauma. Okay. Sometimes when people think of PTSD, they only think of a few words. They're thinking of flashbacks, they're thinking of distressing dreams, they're thinking of this hypervigilance, and it's not always as clear. What people don't understand is that this insomnia, this trauma, right? If it has been pushed back so long, the way it comes out is once you attempt to go to sleep, right? So, say for instance, just imagine this for a moment. You get ready to go to bed, right? Because you were feeling sleepy. I mean, at that moment, before you lay down, you're like, okay, this is the time. I have done all the things. I've had a busy day. I think I'm ready to wind down. And something happens, y'all. The mind and the body just cannot relax. Now, you may feel as though, but I feel relaxed. What have we suggested at times in various videos or lives? We spoke about what can be happening in that nervous system. Okay? Yeah. So then when you go to call it a night, if you will, right? To achieve this good sleep, good rest, then we possibly are still in that hyper arousal state. This alertness is still there, whether it be the mind just racing with thoughts or wandering or becoming fixated on certain thoughts, right? It doesn't mean that you're intentionally doing this, but all of these things are happening when you're trying to sleep. Or you may go to sleep and continuously wake up through the night. Do you hear where I'm going with this? The body and mind and nervous system just can't relax. Yeah, right. So we're talking now about these sleep cycles and stages that one can even experience, right? What about that REM sleep? REM, that rapid eye movement, right? Did you know that when you're experiencing all that I just shared before during this insomnia, the REM sleep is what is mostly affected. Why? Why would the REM sleep be mostly affected? Because that is actually what holds all of these memories, y'all. The processing of our emotions. Yeah, that's what holds that, which is why it's the one that's mostly affected. I hope that you're now even developing a better understanding of what this can look like, right? You may be laying there as an adult in your core self, the part of yourself that we interact, the current self, okay? The part of you that people see at work, the part of you that's with family. And you're like, Cam, no, I know I went through some tough times growing up. I don't know. I don't think it was that bad. I'm hearing you. And here we are, right? Okay. This hyper arousal that is experienced in our nervous system during this insomnia, this chronic insomnia, right? It keeps us on this high alert. Now, it does not mean that in your core self, your current self, your present self, you are feeling endangered or the need to be on high alert. No, it does not mean that. Okay, it's not literal. What it does mean is that the body and mind are remaining in this alert state. Okay. It's almost like the body and the mind possibly may have this fear of the vulnerability during those night hours, right? Because this may have come by way of the long-term consequences and experiences that are associated with that early life stress, the developmental years, okay? What you have to understand is that trauma, it truly changes how our overall nervous system is going to react. That is why when it's not resolved or processed, we become adults who may have an inability to just calm down during those resting hours, if you will. Yeah. Some may have, nightmares and fears, which of course would um, lead to, that avoidance of sleep or waking up with anxiety and then possibly having a difficult time even falling back to sleep, right? What if the environment one grew up in as a child, there were so many disruptions at night? There were so many uncertainties that came across a child's mind during the night and when they're trying to sleep, that now there is a conditioned emotional response. Hmm? Yeah. Because now, this time of night, being in your bed may be associated possibly with this fear and hypervigilance that you experienced as a child, which would prevent sleepiness, y'all. It would prevent that. Yeah. Doesn't that sound a lot like that survival response that we speak of? Yeah. All of these things can be developed, y'all, as a coping mechanism. And it's just maybe that, you never really looked at it that way. You never looked at it like, well, yeah, if I did experience a lot of those things growing up, quite naturally, over time, it's going to begin to leak out and expose itself in various ways, right? Now, we talked about, the things that the child could have experienced as far as like abuse or neglect, um, even if there was SA, right? Okay. The impact of that sexual abuse if the child did experience such. What about the loss of a parent, divorce, things like that? That can also be a disruption, if you will. If those things can cause disturbances and disruptions as adults, what do you think they would do to a child? Think about it. Really, think about what it can look like. Can you imagine? Exactly. So then you may say, okay, Cam, you've told me all about what it looks like. I'm following you. But how would then I even begin to combat this thing? You know? Hmm. I don't know if some of you remember, I gave a breakdown on EMDR, and that stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Sound familiar? Remember, we talked about REM sleep? Mhm. Yeah. Briefly, just to explain, EMDR allows for you to be awake and tap into that REM sleep. Remember, the one that processes and stores all of these memories? Yeah. Now, EMDR can actually and has been proven to help someone alleviate such symptoms as described, like nightmares and what? Insomnia. Hmm. Yeah. Y'all putting this together now, making a little more sense and how this thing can look? Yeah. Now, what can you do? Say if you're like, I'm hearing you, Cam, but I don't know about, that type of technique, the fact that I can be awake and a technique is done, tapping into my REM sleep, but I'm awake. Yeah, I'm hearing you. I get it, right? Sometimes the unknown can be a little scary and have us to avoid just because it's the unknown. So it's like, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I can tell you it definitely helps. It definitely works. Can't say all the time it's going to work, because also it does prove beneficial if the individual that's receiving such treatment is trusting of the one that is um, leading the treatment, i.e., the therapist. So, just something to think about, as far as different modalities that can treat this insomnia, all right, as well as the childhood trauma. Now, what can you do for self? First, ask, what need should have possibly been met when I was a child? We're going into that parts work. Mhm. What could have happened? What could have someone said? What could someone have said, if you will, to alleviate this fear, to help me feel safe, to help me feel secure, to help me feel comfort, this sense of stability, right? You, as the adult now, I encourage you to tap into that childhood self, that childhood part, and really try to figure out what need should have been met at that time. Yeah. The beautiful thing is that you can meet that need now as the adult if you choose to. You can meet it. Or you can say, I don't know about all of that. Yeah. And what you're currently doing isn't working. So what do we have to lose, honestly? You spend time doing everything else, right? Just a different way to look at it. So, first, what you want to do is be intentional about the space that you sleep in. Make it so it holds this sense of relaxation and comfort. What if you need to maybe dim lights? What if you possibly may need to look at getting a weighted blanket, y'all? They can be so helpful. I remember in case management, I used to have individuals that um, experienced, a lot of these same symptoms that we've described. And the weighted blanket was a big help. Also, they even have um, stuffed animals that give the breathing, they give that soothing that soothing. Well, actually, it really does meet a need. So, okay, let's back up. Say, for instance, when the child went to sleep growing up, they felt a loneliness, right? And so the weighted blanket, y'all can do the math. Yeah. I don't know if any of you have ever had a weighted blanket or have even heard of it, but it can be quite beneficial for those that need that calming security when they go to sleep, that feeling. And then back to, like I said, the stuffed animals helps maintain and control that breathing, you know. Some people I've known, they'll say, Cam, it really helped because I took the stuffed animal and kind of put it up against my side. As someone would have a pet. Obviously, I told y'all I'm totally against my pets being in the bed with me, but that's just my personal thing, right? But the stuffed animal, it's not an actual animal, it's not alive. But the cool thing is it provides the same response, right? It's right up against you and it's breathing, right? And it's really cool to see because it actually, like, you can see the stomach of the stuffed animal just going up and down, just up and down. And so those things can be quite helpful, when you're trying to create this safety in your sleep space. Lighting, like I said, also matters. Yeah. What about the consistency in the time we go to sleep, y'all? We want to be consistent. We're trying to now regulate what is released naturally, i.e., melatonin. Yeah. Some people have to take it. And I have found it, that for some individuals it has been helpful. I've also researched at times where it can eventually, when the person stops taking it, it's hard for the body to begin to release that melatonin naturally. And so then they become more reliant on this medication, if you will. And like I said, it is proven to be helpful if you're just trying to regulate this internal clock, if you will. Now, This one y'all are all familiar with. Relaxation techniques. We do it together. Yeah. You know, that whole mindfulness, the meditation that we do together. What about that deep breathing a lot of you use? All of these things are a way to calm the nervous system, y'all, because that's what's experiencing the hyperarousal when we're trying to go to sleep. And there may be insomnia that you're experiencing. Now, you also want to be aware of having some level of control over things that may stimulate the mind too much, right? Okay. So, what does this look like? If you're laying in bed at night and you want to go to sleep, you feel like you could have gone to sleep, but you're just laying there. And then your mind starts racing or thinking about this, thinking about that. Get up, y'all. Get up out of bed. I encourage you to go do something that's going to be an activity that is calming. There's no need to lay there. Before you know it, you ever started thinking about something, and before you know it, 30 minutes have gone by, 40 minutes have gone by, and then you move to something else? You've been up half of the night just laying there thinking. Yeah. When you start noticing this to happen for you, get up. Get up. Find a calming activity to do. Okay? What does this look like? Maybe reading? Hmm? Perhaps listening to music? Maybe. Yeah. Now, I will say, and a lot of you, I'm sure, already know this one especially, you don't want to have the caffeine before we go to bed, right? That is a stimulant. So you definitely want to avoid such because all things of such can possibly fragment that sleep. Okay. What about alcohol? Some people will say, oh, well, I just drink my wine because it helps with sleep. Mm. I encourage you to do research and really see how it is affecting the sleep. Now, I'm not saying that it's a problem if you have a glass of wine before you go to bed. No. What I am saying, though, is if it has become something that is a part of your sleep hygiene, it would not surprise me if you experience fragmented sleep. Mm-mm. Would not surprise me at all because prolonged use can result in such. Okay. So, all of this to just say, in the meantime, in between time, I want you to be intentional. If it may be you that you're thinking, yeah, I did have some things going on in the childhood, didn't think it was a big deal because, who doesn't? And that's where we want to normalize. When y'all hear me say, I want to normalize mental health, I want to normalize the things that we dealt with. The first step is acknowledging that it happened. Don't put what you went through in a box like, oh, well, that was minute. When I look at what this one went through, mine's nothing compared to what they went through. Don't make comparisons. No. Take your eyes off of the external factors. Take your eyes off of those around you and truly focus in on, well, I was a child. Yeah. Yeah. And don't look at it as you would as an adult. because surely you wouldn't expect adult processing and understanding of a child. You wouldn't expect a child to think like that. Let's be realistic here, y'all. Let's just be honest. So, like I said, if it's you that you're like, yeah, man, I did go through some things, and possibly that could be what maybe has disrupted my sleep pattern. Possibly I've suppressed some things. Yeah. Like I said, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, right? Yeah. And it's up to you to recognize that this has happened, that this is what you're experiencing, and then to just say, okay, what was I possibly in need of as a child? You may even say, okay, if I think of the children that I know or I've been around, and if they were to have these behaviors, how would I comfort them? Hmm? Yeah. And that's what you do for self. You can write a letter to that younger self, acknowledging that which may have happened, why they would have been scared, because the goal is to provide them with a sense of safety, security, calming them. And in turn, your current adult self will feel the same. All right, y'all. I look forward to your feedback. I look forward to questions. I look forward to, even if you try these things, I look forward to hearing just how it went for you. As always, it takes intentionality because we can get so comfortable and content with the way things are that, it seems like, I don't know if I want to do all of that. And you're the one still suffering. Always give yourself that space and grace, right? Space and grace. We're all doing this thing called life for the very first time. Be gentle with yourselves. Until next time, peace and blessings to you always. Bye.